Hey folks, Michael Johnson. Welcome to the Energy Sketch for July 3rd, 2023. I was out for a walk on the weekend doing my little groceries and passed by this place here in NDG. In French, we would call it the Voirie, Cours de Voirie. It's where all the city operations, maintenance, garbage trucks, there's even fire trucks here, there's a fire station in the back. All of that city operations and city logistics for the neighborhood happens here in this courtyard here in this area. And it's interesting to notice over here is where they fuel up. So there's a couple of gas stations here. There's pumps for gasoline for the regular cars and also diesel for the heavy machinery and heavy trucks. So I want to spend some time today thinking about what the energy transition might mean for logistical operational centers such as this one. So there's currently some discussion around this, and here's a bunch of text. We're going to go through point by point. So the sort of question out there is, what are we going to do for these trucks? Is it going to be batteries, or is it going to be hydrogen, or is it going to be something else? There's many other options. Decarbonized fuels, metal fuels possibly could be a technology there, but also biofuels, making renewable diesel fuels, these sort of other fuels that are possible. But the main discourse that's happening, and you can Google this, and there's lots of stuff. Well, electric, and what about this? And oh, hydrogen's going to win, and blah blah blah, all this stuff. So there's a couple of issues there that you need to consider. So there's all the infrastructure that you'll need. I mean, right now, today, basically underground here, there's probably 2 or 4 large tanks that hold a lot of chemical energy stored in diesel fuel. You'll remember I showed in the last week's video about decarbonising islands, and if we wanted to make all of that energy from hydrogen, from gaseous hydrogen, we'd need about 10 times as many tanks. So that's one of the challenges, is the storage and charging infrastructure, the space that you need in order to do this. There's also the electrical load and the transmission. So if you're installing like centralized charging at a location like this, you need a fair bit of electrical energy to be delivered there, and the local grids are not always up to the task for that. And if you wanted to install some hydrogen systems, some hydrogen electrolyzers here on this site, you would also likely need to upgrade all of the transmission infrastructure around that to deliver the required energy. So that takes time, takes cost, a lot of disruption, a lot of cost to upgrade the infrastructure. But this is really, everything relies on the grid more and more now. And so one of the other points is like, what if the power goes out and suddenly you can't charge your garbage trucks, you can't charge your fire trucks? So there's a question there of resilience that's needed, and maybe you'll still need some backup liquid fuel, diesel fuel for those times when the power goes out. There's all this other stuff about the range and the duty cycle. So typically, garbage trucks and things like this are going to be just circling, boom, 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 going around and around, up and down the streets, over to the dump their load, come back, do some more. They don't want to be coming back to the central location to be recharged however many times per day that it might be necessary. So that's one of the issues that comes up there, is also the range, the duty cycle of these things. We saw this with the fleet of electric taxis, Teo in Montreal. The issue was that they needed to have many more taxis because the ones are on the road, they need to go back home, they need to charge, they're non-usable during that time while they're charging. So you would need to buy more trucks in that case. You would need to double your fleet so that half of the trucks would be out doing their routes and half of them would be back home getting charged up, and that's a function of how fast can you charge them. All these things are interlinked, of course. And so this brings me to today's perhaps modest proposal. I think there's something super interesting here in these central logistics centers that typically exist in cities, in neighborhoods, so they're really distributed. And I believe that these locations are ideally suited for the future local distributed energy power plants. Actually, even in Quebec, we have an issue, right, where in the winter, the grid is so strained delivering energy to homes that we're unable to convert people into electric heating because of concerns with overstraining the grid. So I wonder if a distributed network of power plants that includes seasonal energy storage could be something that could solve multiple problems here. So those power plants could be delivering heat to the local population, waste heat possibly for co-located with industry, and also charging of all of those city vehicles, and also providing electricity for local neighborhoods in a sort of distributed way instead of relying on the large grids coming from the north of the province delivering all that energy that get very strained in the winter. We could have local distributed decarbonized power plants of the future. So a small modest proposal we'll get into a little bit later, perhaps. No guarantees, no refunds. Thanks for tuning in to this week's Energy Sketch. Toodaloo!